Hi, everyone, and welcome to a Talking Insomnia episode where I'm super excited to have Laura with me. Welcome.
Hey, nice to be here.
Excellent. So again, thank you for joining, Laura. And for those of you who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you end up finding me.
Okay, so I'm Laura. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I found Daniel probably a couple of months ago. So I started experiencing insomnia after a few sleepless nights after getting 4 wisdom teeth removed. However, I had sort of started to have problems with sleep before that and sleep anxiety, but it didn't become as debilitating as until my wisdom teeth, because I had a new job where I had to get up at 6 a.m. and I started to get very anxious about getting up for work, and it was an outdoors job and it was quite physical. And during the pandemic, I was unemployed. So I went from being unemployed to working 5 days a week and getting up at 6 a.m. And so I was like quite tired with the new job. And so the focus on sleep became really important. So you can see how I was already starting to get into maybe some more unhelpful ideas about the importance of sleep and the pressure. And then when the wisdom teeth came out, I was desperate to try and get back to work. And so I was really like trying to push myself with my recovery. And then, just had a couple of nights where I didn't sleep after stopping some pain medication. And then I don't know, it happened. It was really only 2 nights. And then I just really, really freaked out and went down the insomnia rabbit hole and was on Reddit and, was trying all these different things and techniques, and went and saw doctors and was prescribed sleeping pills. And I think I'm not actually sure how I found the channel. I think maybe it was through Reddit or maybe just through typing up. I think I was looking up like insomnia success stories, which is why I wanted to do this today, because actually seeing other people's success stories and knowing that there was, a path was really helpful for me, because I was feeling quite hopeless at some points. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's where I'm so grateful every time somebody's willing to come on like you, Laura, because just the hope that it's and we can talk about more a bit later, but that almost one of the most common questions I get is like, how about me? Like my situation, like I feel totally hopeless. And from my angle, I've seen that there is hope for everyone. As long as you're willing to learn and do some habit change, there's hope for everyone. But anyone hearing it from someone like yourself, Laura, is so helpful. So anyway, thank you again. But let's go back. So, up until, so it was like, if I get it correct, then during the pandemic, you were unemployed, and then you started a new
underemployed,
job.
But had a period of unemployment. Yeah.
You had some employment, but not quite full-time employed. And it was when you got this new job that was full-time, and that happened before the wisdom teeth extraction.
Yeah.
So already then there was kind of a focus on like, I have to get up, I have to get enough sleep.
Yeah. And I remember because I was getting up early, I pushed my bedtime back. And I remember in the evenings, I was cooking and doing laundry, and I was always in this bit of a rush to try and get into bed for 9:30, with this idea that I need the 8 hours sleep. And I've always been quite a light sleeper, and I've always woken up a lot. And one of the things that was really helpful was when I just read in your book that that's completely normal, and that the idea of an 8-hour unbroken sleep is a little bit of is a myth. But yeah, so I'd already started to focus on it. And a couple of years ago, I did also have a period of insomnia, which I now don't know if it was related to low iron. I had anemia, and I got an iron infusion and it was improved. But then again, I still don't know if it was, I think a lot of this is psychological. But there was, a real focus on sleep and getting enough sleep for this job, which was it's an outdoors. It was working in horticulture, or I was doing bush conservation. So I was really tired during the day because it was a new job and I was using new muscles. And so the focus on sleep was already there, and the anxiety around it was already there before the wisdom teeth removal.
Exactly. So before that, I'm guessing you have kind of even more superficial sleep than that's maybe your quote unquote normal, a little more fragmented sleep like that.
Yeah. And I tell people about it, and they're like, oh, that can't be good. Or that's, you wake up so many times. So when you get that kind of, back from people, you think, oh, maybe there is something wrong. And it's like you then go, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to try and improve it. I'm going to try and stretch or do those relaxation things before bed. And I just can't believe what a paradox insomnia is that the harder you try and the more you try to sleep, the further away it becomes. And it became so elusive for me. And I like the obsession with it, especially for probably about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. Like I was hard to not think about anything else. It was just, it was relentless. But in some ways it was really helpful for me because I think I had some underlying anxiety. And so during the pandemic's been very anxiety provoking, but I was very anxious about being unemployed. And then I was very anxious about the wisdom teeth and the whole surgery, and my interactions with the dentist was a very anxious experience for me. And then it was almost just like my anxiety just kept moving to different things. And then when it moved on to my sleep and became really quite debilitating, I was like, right, I really need to look into this. I can't I don't want to keep having this sort of having my mind having so much power over me. And it was hard because I'd be having conversations with friends and family and I wasn't really listening. I wasn't really hearing them because in the back of my head I was thinking, what am I going to do tonight? How, or it would be getting later in the evening and I'd be like, I need to start thinking about going to sleep. And yeah, it really took over my life. And I'm just really glad that I found you when I did, because I only had probably 3 months of a real struggle with it. And I just can't imagine what that's like for people who go for years. So I'm very grateful.
So am I. It's for the exact reason you say. Whenever somebody says that, one of the things that make me really happy is whenever I get a comment that says, "Oh, I just stumbled across your channel," and I'm like, I'm so happy they did, because I think they can get some good information now.
I remember it. It was the book. So I found Set It and Forget It. And Set It and Forget It was a wonderful experience for me because I was actually reading it. And as I was reading it, I felt in my body my anxiety coming down. It was actually a physical, I was reading it. And it was just things around, there's no such, not many people experience 8 hours unbroken sleep, about that there isn't any really conclusive studies around the harm that lack of sleep does. And it was really interesting because once I stopped worrying about sleep and just let myself be tired, that was so much more manageable. Being tired was much better than being in that really high hyper arousal state for me.
Absolutely. And now I became kind of curious because so probably what happened was you heard about the book on maybe Reddit or something, read that, and then you found something like that maybe.
I think I was just doing Google book reviews because I'd read Guy Meadows' ACT book, which was helpful, but I found his method of just lying there for the whole night and being playing with your anxiety a little bit too overwhelming. Whereas I found your approach really helpful because for me, everyone was like, oh, you've just got to accept it. You've got to accept it. And I'm like, how can I accept something that's so awful? But for you, you're saying you're accepting it through befriending wakefulness. So you're actually doing a positive action, and I'm a big reader. So for me, it was now I've got a couple of hours. And it was really good because it would get to 9 o'clock and I'd finish all my, the householdy things, chores or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, now I've got a couple of hours up my sleeve to read and really enjoy it, instead of being like, oh, no, I'm worried about when I'm going to get to sleep. And so seeing that as an opportunity and seeing, it's not like, oh, I'm accepting a total sleepless night. It's I'm just spending a couple more hours enjoying what I'm doing until I'm really tired, was just such an easier thing for me to engage with.
100%. And I think the core message of ACT or Guy Meadows, I think, is very sound, but the problem I see with it is that it's very hard to sort of have that acceptance approach to something when you don't really fully understand what it is you're accepting and what you're
exactly.
With, right?
Yeah. And look, I mean, another person who was very helpful for me is actually a doctor called Dr. Claire Weeks. She's an old self-help and her books on anxiety, because as I said, I think anxiety was a thing for me anyway. And it's been really good because through this process, I've been so less on the other side, so less anxious, because I did actually do that in the day. When I was experiencing strong sleep anxiety, I would get under my weighted blanket, which never helped me sleep. I got it because I saw on Reddit that it helps people sleep, but it never put me to sleep once. But it was really helpful for when I was feeling really overwhelmed and really quite tired, just to lie there and just be right, I'm just going to feel it. I'm just going to feel it. And it did it did pass, if you really open yourself up and say, right, it's okay. I actually also named my sleep anxiety. I called her Patricia. And so I would be like, okay, we're just going to hang out, just you and me. And that's where that self-compassion that you talk about comes in. And that was also really like key for me, because it's like, well, and when you said like, why be frustrated with something, like you can't control sleep, right? So why be frustrated with yourself that you can't control, and just about how to hold yourself when you are having those tough days, or when you are feeling really, exhausted. And yeah, it all just sort of came together, and it does take time. And also the sleep restriction thing was helpful for me too. And the way that you introduced it was helpful, because I'd read about it in CBT and I was like, I'll just be really, really, really anxious. How can I like restrict my sleep? But with the timeless sleep window and just not paying attention to the time and going to sleep when you're really, really tired, that was key as well.
Super, super nice hearing this. And one thing that just got me curious now is like, I've read one of Claire Week's books. I think the first one, and it's amazing. I think she's amazing.
She was ahead of her time.
Oh, totally. And she's from Australia, right?
Yeah. She was a GP, and she's amazing because she used to have a panic problem. Like she had her own anxiety, and she's developed this from her own way of moving through that.
Yes. Wonderful. So, okay. So, let's just go back a little bit to kind of like the timeline again. So there was like 2-3 months of kind of real intense struggle where you kind of obsessed with it. Like it was always on your mind. You found the book, it was helpful. And then you found the channel, tuned in, and then you decided and then you joined BedTyme as well.
Yeah. As I said, as you wrote in the book, there's this like a sort of perfectionist aspect to me. So I was like, I'm going to read everything. I'm going to do everything. But I thought that the app, I think, as you said, when you first start, your brain starts to freak out a little bit. You know how you always say it's a bit bumpy at the beginning? And so I was starting to put in what the book was saying, but I felt like I need a little bit more support, because that bit is hard just to keep me on track. And that's why the app was really helpful, because you get the information each day, but it's also the direct chat function and the support, and just being able on those more trickier days to check in and be like, am I still on track? And I think I don't think it would have happened as quickly for me in terms of like, sticking with the sleep restriction, and because it was really only within 1 or 2 weeks of using the app that my sleep started to improve dramatically for me. It still wasn't 100%, and it still isn't. I don't think I don't even know what that means anymore. I have a lot of energy during the day, and I'm really happy, and things are going really well. So that for me is enough.
100%.
But but the app was really important, I think, for me, because I quite enjoyed the communication with yourself. That was just really helpful, because there were a couple of days, I think I messaged you when I was at work, and I was just like, and because it was summer in Australia, so it was like, 30 plus days. I don't have any aircon in my house, so the heat would really affect my sleep. And it was just really good having someone to chat to on the other day who wasn't, who kind of could just be like, give me the encouragement that I needed.
And interesting, like if we looking back at that, because I remember that when you were outside and it was really hot, etc. Like in retrospect, there's always this like I think we talked about this within the app, the kind of physical fatigue that happens when you're just very active, and the kind of emotional fatigue that comes with that, like the frustration with struggle. I can't make sleep happen. I can't control my thoughts. All that thing. Like in retrospect, do you find that most of it was kind of like it was just the heat, it was just physical fatigue, or there was a big component of that emotional fatigue as well?
Oh no, definitely there was the emotional fatigue, and the heat. But as I said, I found this really interesting thing that I would do after my workday, which was really interesting, where I would come home, and I coined it like the flop. But I would use my weighted blanket, and I would, for 15, 20 minutes after I had a shower or whatever, I would just lie there and just feel really tired. But it was really interesting, because that 15, 20 minutes afterwards, I had all this energy for my evening, for cooking dinner, for hanging out with my partner, being with my housemates. And it was actually like, that was really interesting, because I was like, I've been energized from just a 15-minute, 20-minute. So that was like the physical fatigue was being able to be managed by those short kind of rests. And that was really great, because I was like, look, I know if I'm really getting to the end of the day that I just do this, and it gives me more energy. And so, yeah, I do think a lot of it was the emotional back and forth and the worry and the struggle,
Yes.
that is really, really tiring.
And let me, when I heard that, what you just said about the 15-minute rest, my mind goes almost in a different direction. It goes towards like, when somebody's like, why am I so tired? I got to do something so I feel less tired. Then it kind of snowballs. But if you kind of you allow yourself to like, now I'm going to really allow myself to feel tired. That can help really with that emotional fatigue as well. Do you think that could help with that too?
Yeah, definitely. And it was just a really beautiful thing to do at the end of the day. It's like a transition, the work days ended and now I've got like my home life that I really want to engage in and not be tired and grumpy. And so I still do it now, even though I'm sleeping fine because I'm I've just got a new job in gardening and it is quite physical, which is one of the reasons I like it. But, after a long day, you do sometimes feel a bit tired and you might not have the same headspace, and it's that self-compassion thing. It's like not looking at your phone or anything. It's just a real relaxation, and I just like notice my breathing and maybe how I feel. But it was actually key for me when I wasn't sleeping, because I knew that because you don't feel good when you're grumpy and snappy and around the people that you love, or when you're really that tired. And I was like, this is really interesting. Like, I don't know if it works for everybody, but that could actually give me enough energy for a couple of hours. And it would be quite funny because I would like be hanging out with, my housemate or somebody, and they'd be like, oh, I'm really tired. And I'm like, I'm actually feeling quite energized. And like comparatively how much sleep I'd had like far less.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I do believe it will help everyone when you're not escaping that discomfort and you kind of allowing yourself to feel it, no matter how you do that. I think it's super helpful for everyone. And actually, one thing that I remember you mentioning that I really want to talk about was how having had this kind of struggle and learning about insomnia, learning about sleep, learning about yourself can actually be kind of helpful outside of like sleep. You've had that experience, right?
Oh, definitely. So I think because so I used to be a meditator, but the pandemic lockdown, I moved away from my meditation practice. The great thing about meditation, the way that I've learned it, is about really sitting. It's not about trying to relax or trying to calm your mind. It's about sitting there with your direct experience, whatever is happening, and being with that. And I hadn't been doing that at all. And so there was something about experiencing quite a bit of, suffering that made me get back on the cushion and get back into my meditation practice. And that was really, really, and connecting with a community that I used to meditate with as well. And the anxiety, I have had far less anxiety. Even in my sort of day-to-day life, like I've started a new job, I've had multiple job interviews before that. I've been in a period of change and transition, which usually would be quite upsetting for me. And because I've been able to sit with these really quite difficult and discomfort things, I'm just like, happy that I'm feeling well and that I'm present and that I've got a degree of kind of calmness because of all this education and change. And I just feel like I'm a lot more present in my conversations because I'm not worrying or thinking about what could be going wrong or, thinking too much in the future. I feel like, it's improved some of my relationships with the people around me. And, so I think it's been actually a life-changing kind of experience for me. I wouldn't have said it at the time that I would have wanted it to happen, but now that I'm sort of on the other side, I think it was a gift, and I think in some ways it was a part of me, maybe my soul or whatever, saying, this current way that you're relating to yourself, especially the sort of critical harshness, is not actually you, and it's not actually how you want to be in the world. And it almost had to get so bad for me to like actually really properly look into it and develop some of these like kindness practices and develop some of this, because self-compassion is a practice. It doesn't just happen overnight. And I just feel like I'm a lot easier on myself. I give myself less of a hard time. And I'm more in life, I suppose, than I was in the couple of years following up to this. So it's been
amazing here. So happy to hear this. And just one last thing will be like, you've probably already touched upon this, but still, if you would, talk to yourself a couple of months ago, or someone else that is in that stage where they're obsessing about sleep, like in this rabbit hole, etc., what would you tell that person?
Well, I've already recommended your website to multiple people. So I would be like, see, Daniel, I have to say, I was kind of getting there, but I wouldn't be where I was without your work. I love how much you care, and like the sort of dedication that you have to your work is, phenomenal. So I would say, yes, get to the website quicker. But I would also, I don't know, what would I say? I would say that like this is actually happening for a reason, and there's something deeper happening here. There's something that's trying to be heard. It's sometimes something has to make a lot of noise for you to tune in and pay attention to it, and that it's going to be okay. That you will be able to move through it, and that you'll learn a lot about it in the process. And that will be knowledge that you'll have for the rest of your life, but the one thing that I do really wish, and which is why I've said I do this, and I've, wrote that review on Reddit, is I just really want more people to find this an approach, because there are so many people struggling out there. And yeah, they don't need to really. In regards to sleep, I just wish I wish this information was more widely available, and I'm hoping through your work it will be.
Absolutely, and this is I'm an optimist, and I believe that there is so much confusion out there, as you know. There's so many people who don't get the right information, and so many people who probably have good intent but don't really understand what they're recommending to their fellow humans. So I think the message that's here, and sort of, by the way, like Claire Weeks and many other great teachers have been on, it's basically the same message. I think the thing is that there aren't that many people who've applied it to sleep yet. So just hopeful that with time it'll spread for sure.
But I mean, sleep's an interesting one with anxiety, because it is able to take up so much, because you sleep like every day. You know what I mean? Like it's always happening. Like it's a regular thing. Exactly. So it's a really interesting one for anxiety to sink its teeth into. Because then it does sort of snowball, because if you do have, you feel if you have less sleep, you're more anxious the next day. But really it's just, there are so many kind of things that we're told about sleep, and it can, have a real impact on the way that we relate to it.
100%. Well, I'll say this is amazing. I know a lot of people are going to find hope here, and I hope so. Thanks so much for sharing, and stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Okay.
See ya.